Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. So I think we're just here today to give everybody an update on where we are at Kwinana. And I think the key thing here is that we're up and running, we're operational. This is a huge success, and we want to take you through what the journey we've been on today, outline a bit about where we're at with the process, and also start to do some of that knowledge sharing back into the audience of people who are keen to hear about the journey we've been on and how this could inform part of their journey going forward. So just a quick bit about Accionis to begin with. As a renewable energy and sustainable company, we strive to provide solutions around the world for different challenges that different industries, different organizations need, whether that be in the waste space, in the energy space, in the water space. So we've got teams around the world delivering projects. We said there 60,000 people over, with 44,200 in Australia and New Zealand. We're happy to take on any challenge that's in that industry space, whether that be in the finance, build, own, operate, across that whole piece there. We've got experience there, and I think we're demonstrating that in what we're doing at Kwinana. In terms of how we do it, and that's for us just as important as what it is that we do. We are a people-centric organization. We believe and we empower the teams of people to deliver projects. That's the way we do. We challenge and we want them to innovate, and we lead from the front. We don't step back. Many of you here today will probably have seen or be close to a project that we've delivered across all parts of the country. We've just put up there a few examples of current and recent projects there. The Western Harbour Tunnel, probably for those of you from Sydney will be aware of that, the new crossing. So that piece of infrastructure is ongoing now. The tunnel boring machines are being made, and they'll be moved from China to Australia later this year. Again, we've got water treatment, we've got transport solutions, energy solutions, including one of the largest wind farms in the country, along with desalination and energy distribution. Back to the clicker problem again. Here we go. Okay, so moving to Kwinana, probably what everyone's here to find out about. So we are Australia's first operating energy recovery facility. We use proven technology to deliver safe, clean, and reliable resource recovery. Everyone's probably seen the slide before. Everyone's probably heard it before. But we can't stop talking about this. We can't stop pushing the message out there. If we don't believe it, and if everybody here doesn't take this away and start pushing it into all of the stakeholders that you engage with, we'll never get there, right? We are the informed. We're the ones who are driving this change, and we're trying to encourage everybody to get on with us and with everybody else in the room to really drive this energy recovery journey. From an energy recovery point of view, we need to understand the total benefits that this provides. So we're not just diverting waste from landfill. Yeah, that's clearly a benefit that comes, but there are a lot of other benefits that come along. We provide a lower carbon solution to managing waste. Energy recovery is a better option than landfill. It's not perfect, but there are options to improve that in the future. You can install carbon capture, and that's been done not just at pilot stage, but at full stage in the UK. And at the point when it's economically viable here, there'd be no reason that it couldn't be adapted into new energy recovery projects. We're supplying energy to the grid, and that's offsetting other baseload power that's been generated. And we also, more importantly, do resource recovery. Overall, we're recovering 96% of what comes through the front door. The majority of that is in the energy space, but beyond that, you've also got a significant portion of aggregate that's recovered for replacing virgin material in construction, and huge amounts of ferrous and non-ferrous metals, including both steel, iron, copper, aluminium, and rare earth and precious metals. So a few operating stats for what we're actually doing right here, right now. We are able to receive over 150 deliveries a day from our local authority and commercial partners. So those are coming in every day. as many of you have seen if you visited or seen any videos, we're moving waste around with the crane system that's moving over 6.5 tons at a time. This is a very large scale process that we're using, and we're feeding the grate, and then we're processing between 17 and 35 ton an hour, depending on the calorific value. As we said, the furnace, we all know there's the magic 850 degrees for 2 seconds. We're typically running at well over 1,000 degrees. So we are in that very high range. That's not obviously what we guarantee, but that's the reality of what happens when we're processing this type of waste. In order to support that process, we're using over 300,000 cubes an hour of air, and that's going up through the stack, which is 87 meters high. We are continuously monitoring all of the emissions. They're being recorded, and they're being provided to the regulator. We do what we say on the tin. We have high-pressure steam going through to the turbine. That's turning over 5,500 RPM and generating power to the grid. And we're handling, in a year, over 100,000 tonne of bottom ash and 20,000 tonne of fly ash and APCR. So, what have we done so far? So far at Kwinana, up to the end of last month, we've diverted 114,000 tonnes of waste from landfill. Around about 85% of that is MSW from our local authority partners who have come in, with the remainder from our C&I suppliers. We've been monitoring the waste that's coming in, and we'll talk a bit about that in some of the lessons. It's a really important stage of what differentiates us from other residual waste outcomes, is actually the quality of the material that we need and the actions that we need to take to understand that and monitor that along the way, whether that be through CCTV or whether that be actually physically tipping waste out and actually going through it, because it is important to understand your feedstock. We've also created over 19,500 tonnes of IBAA, and that material is now being reused. That material is being, as we stand here right now, being put into the civils works that's finishing the Kwinana site. And we've been working with our partners in our supply chain to actually get a product now that is ready for market, and people in WA can use this material. We've also recovered over 3,000 tonnes of ferrous and non-ferrous metal. The one thing that is sure is that our recycling isn't that great, right? There is a lot of containers, unfortunately, ending up in the red bin stream. We do find that, and that's just something there for people to take away. That is a lot of metal that would have otherwise ended up in landfill. So in terms of building Kwinana, I think everybody kind of understands a little bit that it's a complex process, it's a complex plant. And some of you may have visited, some of you may not. So we just wanted to take a minute just to try and give people an understanding of the complexity of what we're dealing with. So this is a shot from the 3D model, which shows every component, every pipe, wire, steel member, piece of equipment that we've installed inside the Kwinana facility. So I'm not going to try and talk through every single piece, but it gives everybody an idea of the complexity of what we're dealing with. And if anybody who's visited the site will see that as well. And a few snapshots from the build. This was the grate being lifted in. So this was in the early phase when we were actually lifting in the core pieces of equipment. And then later on, the key piece, which is the lifting of the steam drum, which sits right on top of the boiler, which is on the 17th floor, around about 45 meters up in the air. So, and then finally, the last section of the stack, again, lifted in carrying modules from China, and these were then brought through the local port and then lifted into place here at Kwinana. So to try and help people understand what we're trying to do, to give some sort of, I don't know, stats on what it is, there's over 475 kilometres of cabling on site. So for those that are from WA, that's Perth to Albany as a cable, or round about the altitude that the ISS orbits at. From an effort point of view, we've expended over 3.5 million man-hours building the facility. We've carried out 26,500 inspection test reports. On everything we install, we have to go through the quality systems to ensure that when we put it together, it's going to work in the right way. We've installed over 30,000 tonnes of concrete, which is more than the Sydney Harbour Opera House roof, and we've installed 30 kilometres of pressurised piping. So again, more than 25 laps around the MCG, or if you're from WA, that's from the Kwinana site out to Rottnest. So we've got 7,500 technical drawings, all of which will need to be updated at the end to as-built, and over 7,500 tons of structural steel. So pretty significant facility. Again, more than what's going in the Eiffel Tower frame. So I think the key thing that a lot of people now want to understand is, what should we do? So I know Craig kind of introduced the COVID issue earlier on, so I thank him for that. Yeah, probably not the best of ideas to do it during a pandemic. Let's hope there's not one of them coming along anytime soon. But yeah, clearly it didn't help. But there was a lot of things here that we all probably either know or should think about. And yeah, we agree, safety must be the priority. But it isn't just a one-stop shop. This changes. When you start one of these facilities, you're on a green or brownfield site, and everyone's probably going down. By the time you finish the commissioning, you're in an operating facility. There's a huge difference in the safety regimes that you need at the start and that you need at the end. And you need a safety management system that can deal with that. The next one is to focus on developing a long-term sustainable business. I think there was a lot of talk about this earlier on as to how do we get these things going, and it isn't just about the initial capex. Yeah, we're not delivering a project. We're delivering a business. We're delivering a business that can run sustainably on its own for the next 25, 30, 35 years. That's the only way that we'll provide a service to our customers. We're not here for a good time, we're here for a long time. And that is really, really important. To invest with people and partners and organizations with aligned values. People who are going to be in this for the long haul and that understand, and we foster an environment of collaboration. We build trust and we build confidence in what we do. That is how we manage the stakeholders. That's how we go on this journey. As you say, we combine local expertise and international experience. That piece there, nobody can do this alone, and we don't have that capability in country right now. We need to bring people to help us with this. And we need to fully understand all of those regulatory and compliance requirements. There's, as you wouldn't be surprised, bringing in a lot of technology from Europe. Our supply chain are very good at building things to European standards, which are not quite the same as Australian standards. So that piece there is a huge lesson that I think people can take away to understand that their supply chains they use today, who work in different jurisdictions, need that education, need that support as well to bring them on that journey with us. And probably the last thing, waste just isn't waste. This isn't landfill 2.0. This is a completely different thing we're talking about here. We're talking about a fuel that's to a specification. We turn waste away that isn't to specification. That is really important for people to understand, that there are materials that we can't process, and that either by license. There's also materials that won't go through our process. Landfill has got a much broader category that they can take compared to energy recovery. So we've been on that journey. We've been working with our suppliers, both local authorities and commercial customers, around understanding what is and isn't suitable for energy recovery. And that education journey takes a long while. And that's something that we know we'll be on for some time. There's been a lot of talk about how long it takes to get a project up. And we're keen, we can share our journey here. It's been probably the longest and probably shouldn't be this long either. But this is what it's been. So I won't talk through the whole thing, but just picking on a few kind of key years for what they are. 2013. So in 2013, the key piece of enabling guidance was effectively the Waste Authority's position statement on energy recovery, which stated that if suitably located, managed, this is a safe technology. So that didn't place any restriction on location in terms of whether it had to be in a precinct or not. It didn't specify how big it had to be. It didn't specify anything. It said that if they are efficient and suitably regulated and placed in a way that doesn't impact the environment locally, they are safe. And I think that's a really key piece that then enabled all of the regulatory approvals to follow. That then also enabled the first waste supply agreements to be entered into, which started to build the basis for the business case. 2015, we started to have the approvals come through, and further local authorities started to get on board. And then obviously at the last year was when we actually fired the plants up. So this was the first time that the boilers had been run. We fed in waste, we produced IBAA, and now we've moved into 2025 where we've now started to export power and commence operation. So as we sit here today, we've just come off our first statutory outage. So we've reached the point where under all the pressure regulations, we have to inspect our vessels every year. We've gone through that process and we've now bringing the plant back online again, and we're now in that operating mode. So as we move towards the end of the time, we all talked earlier on about needing to bring communities on a journey. The first thing that we wanted to talk about in this piece was actually understanding who are all of your stakeholders, how do you bring them on that journey? And we thought it was worthwhile just putting it up here to try and help people understand how many we have. And there's some of them which are obvious. We understand the EPA, we understand the WorkSafe. But then we've also got all of the various councils, whether they be and commercial partners bringing waste. We've got the grid and all of the energy pieces, including the people who operate the market, both whether that be in the WEM, in obviously in WA or the NEM over here. All of the, then coming across the bottom, the people who deal with our offtakes. You know, as we talked about, this is a whole business that we're establishing here, and in order to make the whole piece work, we need our partners. We need someone to deal with the IBA. We need someone to deal with the APCR. We can't bury our heads in the sand and pretend it doesn't happen. So at the minute, we've got an outlet taking it to the Tullers facility at Sandy Ridge. That's a way of dealing with APCR. We're not here to say it's the best way or the only way or the way we'll do it forever, but it is a way. We need a degree of oversight and certification. We need O&M, we need EPC, and we need funding. All of these pieces together come together through, in this case, an SPV. Other people talked about other models for developing sort of infrastructure project, but we're here through an SPV, which is the Kwinana Energy Recovery. And ultimately, we need to all bring in all of these stakeholders on the journey all the time, which, as you can see from the previous slide, is one hell of a long journey. So the other key piece around how we do it is being in the community. The Kwinana facility is located in WA, in the Kwinana Strip, one of the most heavy industrial areas in WA. So from that point of view, we don't have some of the neighbour issues that other proponents are obviously up against. But we do have a community who we engage with. We do have local industry who we engage with, who we create issues for, and they create issues for us. And we shouldn't shy away from those points. We should embrace them, and we should go out and understand how we impact each other so that we can manage it in the best way possible. We'll be developing a community education facility on site, and we'll be supporting that education process, not just about energy recovery, but the whole journey. We're working with DWER in WA so that we align our education messages with the state's education messages, with the local authorities' education messages, so that we go on this journey together. We end up partnerships with the universities around understanding how we can inspire and support the next generation of people coming through who want to understand what we do here. And we leave legacy of workforce who have actually gone through this process, who have built this and understand the process we're going through. And we support our local community through, whether it be through volunteering or sponsorship, to actually help them in their own journeys. So, time's nearly up for me, but if anybody's got any questions beyond whatever we get through this afternoon, depending on how long we hang on for, we're over at booth 11, if anybody wants to come and ask any questions after this. So, thank you very much.